Okay. So, Scholar Lukman, you can go ahead. I think you are the moderator. Let me check.
To the group and share it with others that will join.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Lukman Muraina. I am the moderator for today's once again HISF scholarship session. Today we will be talking about assessing university and research training program. That is the popular RTP program. The popular RTP program once again scholarships in Australia. So basically, we'll be talking about the Australian scholarship RTP, and the person who we are honored to have that will be doing that for us today is in the person of Mr. Chibuikem Michael Adilieme. I'm very sorry, Mr. Michael, if I successfully butchered your name. I'm sure you can restate your name when you are presenting. Yeah, so that's basically what we are doing. Just to tell you more, once again, my name is Lukman, a PhD candidate at the University of York, and I am pleased to be a moderator today. We are not really doing we don't have like a very long agenda for today. Basically, we are done with the introduction of what we are doing. Next, I'm going to invite the speaker to do a short introduction of himself, and then we will have to return back to me, and I'm going to throw the room open for the presenter, Mr. Michael, to go forward with the presentation proper. Then we arrive at the Q&A, and then we say goodbye to everyone. And once let me use this opportunity to say a very good morning to all our viewers, especially in Africa. And then I don't know how I'm going to greet Mr. Michael, who is around 10 p.m. at his place, and everybody is joining at different parts of the world. I think people in the U.S., in America generally are sleeping by now. So whatever time you are, I say good day to you, and thank you so much for joining us. Mr. Michael, could you please introduce yourself to us? Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. My name is Chibuikem Michael Adilieme. I am a second year PhD student at UNSW. I've been here since last year. Before coming here, I practiced as a property valuer in Nigeria, and I've also been part of the HISF initiative for some time now, having benefited from tips and the sessions. Um, Over here, I also lead the African Students Union within UNSW. So I think that's all there is to know about me, at least at this point. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Michael, for that very brief introduction. Before you start your presentation, could I just suggest that you state the full name of your university? I think you
Oh, okay.
just
Yeah,
stated the
yeah, yeah.
university.
Sorry. Yes,
So
it's
just go on with the presentation as well. Thank you very much.
our
We are hopeful that you are going to delight us with your presentation. Thank you.
All right, fine. Before I start, the school is actually University of New South Wales, Sydney. It's quite long, so we just use the abbreviation here to go with. So this morning, but even where I am, I would kind of dwell on scholarships for research-based programs in Australia, which it's been titled the Research Training Program. Australian universities rank very high in the world in terms of their capacity, and that has also translated to the funding they give. So while this evening is going to dwell on research-based programs, that is not to say they do not give for coursework. However, the reason why we're focusing on research-based is when we try to look at the quantum of funds made available, we see that most of it goes towards the research-based program. So if you're in Australia, you would always hear things like research-intensive universities, research-funded universities. So most of their universities here are powered by the research they do. So because of that, there is the research training program. It's a kind of special program by the Australian government where they give block grants to the universities in Australia to conduct research. So the universities now allocate these grants to bringing in students to conduct that research. However, you understand when government is providing you funding, some interests will take preeminence over the other. So because of the nature of the research training program, most universities in Australia kind of have their own equivalent where they index their funding on this research training program to also bring in more international students. Because for most Australian universities, the bulk of those who do the research are actually international students. So while this research training program would kind of bring much of domestic students and few international students, you have the equivalent of the different universities, bringing in bulk of the international student. So for the PhD students, it's usually for 3.5 years, max of 4 years. While for masters by research, that's the unique thing about Australia. In terms of masters, they have masters by coursework, masters by research, and MPhil. So for the masters by research, it is 2 years. So going back to the main presentation now on this research based funding. Like I explained, because different schools have their equivalents to bring in international students. So for my school, for instance, it's called UIPA, the University International Postgraduate Award. So if you can, from the screen, you see that both the value for the RTP and the value for the UIPA are the same. The only difference is maybe one, you're not going to pay visa like the RTP. They won't, you won't be liable to pay in your visa, and that's the only difference. The other things are the same. Then you go to a school like University of Melbourne, where it is the same thing too. They have their own equivalent that awards like 600 students every year. Theirs is called the Graduate Research Scholarships. Then UTS, that's University Technology, UTS Sydney. They also have their own equivalent. But when you look at, like, you see UTS is 32.5, you see Melbourne is 110, this is around 34K, while you see UNSW 35,000. What is happening here is the RTP is like the base, rate which most universities adopt. So for this year, for instance, the RTP was indexed at 29K. So what they tell schools is you can't give a scholarship below 29K for the stipend, and you can't give more than 46K. So the schools are now allowed to give between the band of 29K to 46K. So there are students who are earning even much higher than the 35K which I showed you for the different schools. So that then depends on if you're doing any extra projects and the unique nature of your scholarship. So apart from RTP now and the university equivalent, which I've just showed you, there is also a third one. We call it tuition fee scholarship. So this kind of scholarship is, let's assume a supervisor or a school have a project. So they want to recruit students. So the school will give you a tuition fee. So you will not pay tuition. Then your stipend will be paid by the amount that was budgeted for in that project, or the amount awarded to your supervisor. Your supervisor would inform you beforehand, this is the amount I'll be paying. Many a times that scholarship is usually below the others I have already mentioned, simply because unlike the others that are indexed and they grow annually, no matter how small, this one is usually constant because the supervisor has said from the get-go. This is the amount I'm going to pay, and you know that there is a fixed budget. It's the budget for the project. That is where they got the amount they're going to use to pay you. And some other times, we've also seen that there are situations where you would even earn higher, because sometimes that project might be a special project where the budget might be as much as 45K or even 50K for the student, So it just depends on the amount of value attached to that project. So the other kind of scholarship for research is what you call the donor or project sponsored funding. So there are some times where some of the schools will want to target special select people to reward them or make them include them in the research programs. For instance, in my school, because they've observed that there are very few women in construction, they kind of wrote the proposal to the government, they got the grant. So they are targeting the scholarship specifically for women to come and do research within the field of construction. So even the stipend which is budgeted for is much higher than the 35, because I think it's around 40K or so. I think I would need to verify that. Then the other one is also, there are like external organizations, or let's say scholarship that have been created in memory of someone, like an architect, like as I have on my screen, the Anita Lawrence Scholarship, for acoustics. So when you're coming to under that scholarship, your research has to be under the field of acoustics. You understand? So then the last one is the country contribution scholarship. So there are certain countries where they value the impact of their citizens with regards to education. So I have so many of my colleagues from China who are being sponsored by CSC. The Pakistanis are here. Their government also has okay, the school will provide tuition, will provide stipend, or the school provide a certain amount to press. So there have been this agreement. So when you go on the different website of the school, like this is for my school, you see there it clearly stated for the contribution, this is the amount and the special things you need to do to be able to access those scholarships. But the catch to this kind of scholarship is you have to be a citizen of that. So someone like me now can't benefit from this particular CSC. This one is just for Chinese students who are doing PhD in UNSW. So when you go to University of Melbourne, you see that the Chinese government has kind of, in the top Australian schools, have this CSC in place. So when you come here, you will not be surprised to find lots of their students here. They're not getting the funding from the school. Instead, they are getting the funding from CSC, which is through the benefit of their government. So I have tried to explain here, the basic things the scholarships cover. So the most research-based scholarship in Australia is usually covers your tuition, your stipend for the living costs, and in some cases they would give you a grant, like a yearly grant for either personal development or for research, and some would also give you an allowance for the publication of your thesis. And a good number of them will refund you because in Australia, when you're coming in, you have to purchase health cover. So many of them would refund you that health cover, and many of them would also give you a relocation grant. So when you come in, they give you money to support your adjusting to life in Australia. Then I've also explained the core difference between the RTP. Now, RTP as provided by the government, if you are awarded RTP, as opposed to the equivalent from the school. So in this situation, it can be that for the RTP, your transport will be discounted. You would not need to pay for your student visa, and I think that's just basically the difference. There's no really big difference. Then also for the RTP, while the RTP goes up to 4 years, many of the schools, the scholarship they give you for PhD terminates, the stipend itself terminates at 3.5 years, while the school fees portion goes up to 4 years. So even if you go over 3.5 years, you can still complete your PhD. Though what we've come to find is many international students complete their, except for during COVID, many completed their PhDs and keep completing their PhD under 3.5 years. So we now go to the next aspect, which is the process for getting or winning a scholarship to this research-based program. So it might surprise you to note that unlike most countries, Australia kind of copies the UK model in the sense that it's like one of the most straightforward universities to apply for, especially if it's a university that doesn't require you applying through an agent, because that's an issue that always come up. It's straightforward. So the first thing you usually do is some schools will tell you, no, it's not compulsory to get a supervisor and all that. But I would advise from experience, getting a supervisor kind of helps you cut down the waiting time. So the way it goes is if you apply without a supervisor, they will first use the first 4 weeks to look for a supervisor for you. And if they manage to get the supervisor will now start meeting with you to now agree, to say, okay, I like this student, I would be able to supervise the student. Then you now put in your application. So because of it, like my school, they require you to first get a supervisor. The supervisor would respond to you. Then you would then apply to the faculty. The faculty will do a kind of EOI to look at your credential, look at your application. If the faculty is, so when you're applying to the faculty for my school, you would indicate if you need a scholarship to study. So if you indicate when you're filling the form that I will not be able to continue study if a scholarship is not awarded, you know that when the faculty tells you, okay, yes, we are okaying your expression of interest, you know that there is a 90% chance to get that funding. Why? Because the different, like I explained, based on the RTP model, the different faculties already have a specific number of students that they have said these are the number of scholarships that will be awarded in a year or in an admission cycle. So if they've looked at your whole profile and said, okay, since you've said you will not be able to study without a scholarship, go ahead to apply. It means they have most likely taken you into consideration. So unless maybe in filling your form you mess up by maybe you forgot to include a document or there are discrepancies in what you're filling, in extreme cases, that's the only case where after the process you do not end up winning the scholarship. So going back to the first question of getting the supervisor. So for Australia, I would usually say be decision ready because of the unique position of Australia, we see lots of, like I use my school now where I operate as an example. You're seeing lots of applications from China, India, Nepal, Bangladesh, Pakistan. So your profile when you are sending an email to a supervisor should be one that catches the eye of the supervisor, and you should be almost ready. What I mean by almost audition ready is when you are looking for the supervisor, like let's say you are in the area of property valuation, try to have even if 1 page or 2 page of a problem in property valuation. Some schools will tell you just write between 500 words to 1,000 words. Some school will tell you 2,500 word proposal, such that when you send the email to the supervisor, you say, okay, I've looked at your profile, I've read this your article on this, that, and would you be willing to take me on? I think we should do, just like this. So you may not need to send the proposal with the first email, but showing that you are aware of what the person is doing or you're interested in the methods being applied helps the supervisors kind of take notice of you, because like I said, they receive lots of emails on a daily basis. So it's that first impression that matters. And the one issue which we face as Nigerians in Australia is they don't really know our education system. So it's sad to say there are certain schools in Australia where if you're applying and you're not applying with a credential from let's say Unilag, FUTA, UNN, UI, Unilawyer, and the rest, they don't really, because they are not used to all those new schools, state schools coming out of Nigeria, So, but those are the things we're trying to change now while we're there. So it's always good to have that your email, so that the supervisor would not have to doubt. The person is always, okay, the student said this, let me give the person a chance, even if it's a 30 minutes chat. So like I showed in my screen, you try to align either a research area or a research method. The unique thing I've observed about Australia is they're a bit flexible. So even if the research area is not aligning or the method is not aligning, don't be deterred. Just once it's within the same field, you try to be smart about it so you don't waste the person's time. Just show that willingness, that you've done this, you've done that. Because remember, you're trying to sell yourself to someone who does not know you. So you're trying to bring your A game in a very brief email. Yeah, so I've tried to put a tip here. So I said the way when you're approaching supervisor, you should put yourself in the shoes of an academic who is overworked, to say, if I was sitting on the other side of the table looking at my screen, receiving an email, what will I look out for after the whole day's job, to be interested in the email of a student, to start talking to the student about supervising the student? When you ask yourself those questions, I think you'll be able to even answer it yourself, you know. Um, and like I said, it's issue of merit. Don't go and start selling the suffer story. No. What we're looking at is merit now. At least be proud of what you have done. Present it well. Otherwise, sometimes it's presentation that matters, how you package the thing. So then I said there are some schools like I must applaud a school like University of Melbourne. They've made their things easy. So when you go to their school portal and they will show you like research areas, you click, it shows you everybody who does something in the research area. You click on the person's profile, it shows you like to the right. When you click contact this supervisor, it kind of creates a format for you and tells you and asks you, do you have a proposal? You say yes. It will tell you, so it will tell you to attach your CV, attach your proposal, and it on its own sends it to the supervisor for you with their format for the email. And after a week, if the supervisor has not responded to you to say no or yes, that same portal would send both the supervisor a reminder and send you a reminder to say this person clicked on your profile, contacting you. Have you attended to it? So not all schools have gone to that level. But the main point is it's always easy to get the contact of a supervisor. Like I said, Australia is not like all those complex schools where you have to go through Twitter, go through, no. On their website, you get their emails. It's quite easy. Then I said once a supervisor agrees to supervise you, I mean, it's from there, it's more or less straightforward because they know the system. They know that for research, there's always funding. So it's always good when you're even talking, you tell them, okay, I need funding. So if they don't have that funding, they will not bother wasting your time. That's the unique thing about this place. So just have your CV. If it's a place that asks you for proposal, have your proposal. Then the unique thing about Australia is that they will never tell you publication. What they tell you is evidence of writing. So your BSc project or your MSc thesis can be evidence of writing. Abstract of your papers combined can be an evidence of writing, and some other things. So for those who are, it will surprise you to know that in Australia there are PhDs that are practice based. So if you have like a portfolio, like let's say you're an architect, you can use your portfolio as evidence of that thing you want to do. So so those are the documents you need to have ready. And from my experience applying to Australia, I realized that they hardly ask you to get letters from your supervisor. What they do is to ask you to supply the emails. So they send a link to the supervisor to fill certain questions and write like the main story about you in the form of recommendation. Hardly do they ever ask but I think it's always good when you're checking the different schools in Australia, look at what is unique to each school. But for most schools, I applied to around two or three, which is was the process. Then one thing you have to note in Australia is I have seen people, Nigerians, get direct PhD with their BSc, even from studying in Nigeria. But in that case, they had to show extensive years of research experience with regards to the papers they had published. So I know when you go online, you mostly see people talk about it when they're talking about the US, but I've seen that for Australia also. Yes, most Australian universities, if you're from like the UK, UAE, Malaysia, and the rest, US, and the rest, with your BSc, you can come direct. But I've seen one person, he's coming in with his BSc from Nigeria. So that's just one takeaway. But like I said, it's always good to have all these conversations with the would-be supervisor. Then, like I noted here in the fourth point, sometimes your practical experience may even win you the scholarship where you do not even have papers. Let's take, for instance, you're in the area of property valuation. You want to do a PhD. You don't really have papers, but you're showing the supervisor that I have worked within this field for, let's say, 5, 10 years. This is what I've done. This is my body of work. They can speak for you, and you can be able to get funding on that basis. Then like I have discussed about the faculty having a number of students who they need to take for the funding. Because of that, it's always good to try to apply early. Because I mean, it follows that if they have, like, let's say they are entitled to 20 students being funded, and 50 people apply, the 50 people are on the same criteria, I think it's quite logical if they take the first 20 they get. So for some, the schools, to even the playing field, what they do is they give only one assessment period. So even if you apply in February or March, like University of Melbourne does that, and they give you the admission in, let's say, April, May, or June, they will tell you beforehand that, please, for the funding, we would not give you a decision until after the October assessment. So what they are doing during that period is they are kind of collecting the profile of everybody who has been granted admission, who has indicated that they need a scholarship. So there are some students who will tell you, nah, I don't need your scholarship, my country is funding me, or I have enough money to pay for my school fees. So they would not be considered. So they're trying to get that one. Is a bit competitive, though a bit fair, because it gives everyone the same chance, but it's quite competitive. But like my school, we have 3 admission cycles. So for each of those cycles, scholarships are assessed and awarded separately for each of the cycles. So in term 1, it's assessed and given. Term 2, same thing. Then term 3. Then, like I said, in a nutshell, while you are preparing to apply, let's say, to an Australian school, you should also put yourself in the shoes of the university and ask yourself, if I were to be the one assessing students who want to come to my school, use my world-class facilities, be sponsored hundreds of thousands of dollars, which is tax-free, what do I need to show to make this university take this bet on me? Remember that the university is actually trying to take a bet on you, a bet that you would finish your PhD within the specified period. That while you are there, you'll be able to engage in scholarly works at the highest level, in terms of the publication, in terms of the conference presentations. That's why you are there. Your work would also be part of what contributes to increasing the profile of the school, because whether you like it or not, these schools are in competition. Every school wants to go ahead of the next school, because that is the way they show their industry partners that they are doing well. So then you have to, it's not by we saying, okay, we want this funding, we want this, we want that. Also put yourself in their shoes to say, okay, if I were to be the ones here trying to look at a student to get them, what am I going to look out for? Because I don't know these people. These people are not my product. How am I sure that they are going to be the best, or they are going to kind of tick all the boxes with regards to improving our profile, doing scholarly work at the highest level? So when you answer that question, the answer you give to yourself would inform you if you are actually ready or not. So to try and wrap up my presentation on the scholarship, all I would say is there is a catch to the Australian scholarship. For the RTP UIPA, you will notice that I kept mentioning scholarship to the students. It's only for the tuition free, where I said you're going to be attached. That's it's coming as part of a project, or the supervisor needs you for the project. So for this other scholarship, the unique thing is, let's say you come to the school because you come to the school, you now realize that, oh, this supervisor, we are not gelling. His research focus is a bit to the left, mine is a bit, the other way. You are allowed, to get another supervisor. We see it happen here every time. In fact, a colleague of mine, his supervisor is even the one that said, oh, the research direction, I am not really grounded in this area. I would recommend you, to continue with this. So he kind of wrote to the graduate research group to say, I'm requesting that you please change this student to be supervised by this person. He will be a better fit for him. So they kind of did all the adjustments to ensure that the student doesn't fall behind in his progress. So the long story short is that, unlike certain places where, at the end of the year, you are thinking, oh, did I perform well? Will my contract, or whatever they call it, assistantship, or be renewed for the next year? For most of Australian scholarship, it's not that way. Once the project you are doing is going on, so you dictate the pace once you come in, because the scholarship is for your studentship, not for any project. So let's say you even go like let's say you are 6 months into the program, you realize, oh, this topic or this thing is not working. You can switch, you can do a course correct. I've even seen people who they do 1 year in a particular school, like let's say chemical engineering, and they're like, nah, I need to be in chemistry. Yes, there are processes for which they would use that switch, but the point is to tell you that you're not going to be penalized for let's say changing supervisor or changing focus, as far as you maintain considerable progress. Also, another catch is, for any extra work you do in the Australian university while on a scholarship, you'll be paid for it differently. So it's your supervisor and his colleagues can come on their own to say, oh, you have experience teaching in your country, take our courses, you'll be paid for it. And they say grade, so you'll be paid for teaching separately. If you grade, you'll be paid for grading separately. If you demonstrate, you'll be paid for some demonstrating separately. If you supervise, paid for supervision separately. So so those ones will be taxed, but your scholarship is never taxed. So at the end, you now realize that, okay, even situations where your supervisor has like some private projects, like let's say there is a research, he applied for a grant, he got a grant, while getting your stipend and being on your studentship, you can say, okay, take me on as a research assistant and be paid separately for that. So the system is designed in such a way that you are kind of protected. So while you do other tasks within the school, you will still be paid and viewed as someone who is giving value. So it's not a situation where the supervisors are now saddling you with extra responsibilities, knowing fully well that you can't complain because you're under a scholarship. From my experience here, that is not usually the case. And I've also tried to include an earlier article I had done on my own journey towards getting a scholarship in Australia. So I think towards the end of this session, the link to this article, which has been showing on my screen, will be shared so that everyone can be able to access it and also access the different links. And as noted in the different posters that were put forward for this particular session, I can always be reached through my LinkedIn, and also my Medium page has lots of writings on different segments of the Australian system with regards to grad school funding, even going towards getting a PR while being a student, because that's also another catch to Australia. If you have considerable work experience, I've seen lecturers here from Nigeria who've gotten their PR within their second year of being student. Same people who are engineers who came in for PhD who have gotten their PR. So the possibilities and opportunities in Australia as a PhD student is quite limitless, and it's only limited by what you can do and your ability to give value to your school. So thank you very much.
We say wonderful. Thank you to you, Mr.
Sorry?
There is an echo from somewhere. I'm sure you can hear me now.
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you clearly.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So I'm saying that HISF says a very wonderful thank you for your commitment, your energy, and your time for this very wonderful and very detailed presentation. We actually appreciate you. We are glad for these commitment of yours. Thank you so much. I'm sure everyone enjoyed it, like myself. Even as a PhD student, at some point I was kind of jealous. Like, why don't I come to Australia to earn the money so that I don't think it's actually an assistantship. It's actually a scholarship because if the school is paying for your studentship and then any other extra work you do are being paid for separately, I think that is scholarship. So congratulations to you, Mr. Michael, for enjoying all the money. Uh, yeah, I can't say more than that. Thank you also for sharing the link, Mr. Our technical assistant, Mr. Kimwumi Shalabib, is going to share it to our viewers all around the world. We don't have anything to do now except to quickly swing into the question and answer section of the whole scholarship presentation. And right here on my screen, uh, I can see Mr. Abdulwasiu Abdulhafiz comment that they are very happy to be here. And I can see, finally, I have a question for you, Mr. Michael. The first question is coming from Oluwatosin Olubumu. But before I say that question, please, I want to encourage you. We are now in the Q&A. Do put in your questions. I don't know how many viewers we have right now, but we usually have more questions than these. So please do let the question keep coming, and don't forget as well. In addition to the response you get today, you can always reach out to the presenter himself on LinkedIn and talk to him, get more advice, but do respect their time. Yeah. So Oluwatosin said, if you don't have a first class, what are your chances of securing a scholarship in Australia?
Okay, that's a very fantastic question. So I would start by saying, if you look at the presentation, I kept mentioning, it's an overall package, and I also gave instance where you might not even have paper publications. You might just have work experience and it helps, So in my case, I didn't. My BSc was not a first class. My BSc was a 2-1, though 4 point something. And then I didn't have papers, but at my MSc was a distinction, and I then had to though thinking back now, the publications were kind of, I mean, it didn't really make sense. I know it didn't add anything, but then that distinction was. So the point is this: like I mentioned, when you sit back and look at, okay, I don't have a first class. Is it not better for me to, go to a federal uni? Because I mentioned one thing about Australian universities. They kind of, among the Nigerian universities, they still recognize, those Unilag, UI, UNN and the rest, university that has that outlook based on the Nigerian standard, and try to see if I can strive and get a distinction at the MSc level when I don't have a first class for my BSc. Then if I have that distinction, even if I have one or two papers, even if it's Q3 or Q2, that's the unique thing about Australia. Australia is not, I mean, the place there, nobody is asking, like when they're assessing, they are saying a Q1, because I think this is the safe place to say, because of the Australia-China issue during the COVID, and that was like the main people who give Australia students. Australia now is actively diversifying, looking for other profile of students. So in fact, between last year and this year, I've seen like some students will joke and tell me that they've seen more black students in our school this year that they've seen since the past 5 years, because so schools that used to be selective are now opening up to say, oh, we have students from Africa who are kind of publishing, almost, every year. Why don't we give them a chance? So not having first class in your bachelor's does not deter you. Now the issue you're now going to start looking at now is because whether we like it or not, the scholarship is more or less a competition. You're competing with others. So if, for instance, your BSc is not a 2-1, it's now a 2-2 or a pass. Because remember, everything has a point, they would aggregate it, And now the issue, like we say, is scaling that first hurdle of having a supervisor who can be willing to take a bet to say, yeah, let me take this guy's application to the faculty, Because remember, these supervisors are receiving from. So I know you don't need a first class, but now the issue now is if the first degree is now, like, let's say pass or 2-2. But like I said, if you have considerable research experience, Australia, they love that thing, because it will surprise you to know that some schools, like my school, they're just introducing in my school. They don't used to do before now. They don't used to do Viva for their PhD. So when you do your PhD, just submit and go. In fact, before now, they don't used to even encourage people to publish. It's just now that supervisors are saying, it's always good to publish while as a student. So if you're now coming in to say, I have an evidence of extensive body of work with regards to my publication, I believe they will be able to make an exception, because everything is a package. Everything has a point. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Michael. I think Mr. Abdulwasil question has also been answered about someone having tutu. So mainly what is happening here is you are in competition with a whole lot of students. Present your best leg out there. So if you are deficient in terms of your BSc grade, ensure you have a better footing with your MSc grade. If you don't have that, can you be, will your research experience or even professional experience, for example, if you studied accounting and perhaps you have been working for the past 10 years, perhaps that can present you as the ideal candidate. So just think about your life history, even if you have been working with a civil society organizations, CSOs, NGOs, just present your best foot out there. That best and unique thing that will ensure that you will be their preferred candidate. Put it out there. Thank you. Now going to Mr. Abayomi's question, and I'm going to ask you two questions at the same time. Please, can a man, well, I don't know, can an individual of 41 years, who is 41 years and has 20 publication coupled with research assistantship experience apply? Additionally, I have distinction at master's level.
I would say those are the people they are looking for. Age aside, though, I would still answer the issue of age now is gonna be a double-edged sword for the person in question, because from what I can see, 20 publications. If I do hope some of these publications are international, I do hope. Research assistant, so you're the person they are looking for because they know that they're not gonna waste time, trying to get you to learn certain things. Where the issue of age may count against you is when you want to move to permanent residency in Australia now, which is a different conversation. Because for Australia, their skilled visa, they have an upper limit of if you are above 45, do not apply. So all our advice for this person is while you are applying for the school and the rest, what you should tell yourself now is as soon as I come in, if I would want to continue in Australia, it means from the day I land, since it shows you already have experience in the academia, there are special routes for people in the academia, for PR, you start it. But with regards to getting admission and funding, yeah, there is no way in RTP and the rest where they put age as a factor. No, I see though Australians now, many of my Australian colleagues who come to study, because the way their system works, as a young person, even before getting your university degree, you're already earning money. So many of them don't even do MSc, talk more of research. So many of them come back to PhD at from late 30s simply because they have a genuine problem they saw and they want to solve that problem. So most of my Australian colleagues are either people that love research and are very young, or people that are very old. There is no middle. So I have lots of them, late 30s, 40s, and early. So you see some of them from their BSc 2021, those ones that love research are doing it. Then the older. So yeah, I think the person is home and dry in that aspect. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. The next question is I'm currently doing my MSc. Can I apply for PhD before finishing my MSc? And the next question is it possible to apply for masters in research without any publication but 3 years of professional experience?
Okay, so to the first question of currently doing MSc, that is where Australia is a bit rigid, because I have a colleague who it affected. If your MSc is not complete and you're doing the MSc in Nigeria where you don't know if ASU will go on strike on tomorrow, I would say wait till your MSc is almost complete or complete before applying, because if you ever indicate there that you have an MSc that is ongoing, they would give you a provisional admission, and before they do anything, you must show the completion statement for the MSc. However, like in the case I was referring to the person who got the PhD direct from BSc from Nigeria, he was doing the MSc, but he was advised, to that his BSc is good enough. He had the first class, he has lots of papers that he can go for it. He shouldn't say anything about him doing an MSc, because had it been he mentioned his MSc while they are giving him the admission, they would not give him the result of the funding. What they will say is the decision on your funding will only be made when a completion statement has been presented. So if you feel that your BSc is good enough to compete, don't mention the MSc, or else wait till you know that okay, your MSc, even if strike happens within the month, you're gonna get it. Yes, because if you mention the MSc, you must show them the completion statement or the certificate, whichever may be. Then the second one of Is it possible to apply for masters in research without any publication or 3 years professional experience? I'm going to be honest with you. As a person, I don't normally advise people to go for the masters by research. Why? Um, you're going to do a master's by research for 2 years, just few taught courses. So you'll most likely be doing, so while the research is not going to be as advanced as that of the PhD student, by the end of the day, you now realize that you've kind of almost like tortured yourself, because you would still need to do like thesis and all those things. So yes, I believe I don't have like people around me who I can use their experience to give an example to say if it is possible. But from what I can see, because I know people who do their BSc here, they just go to the master's by research. They don't need to show any evidence. But then now you now have to look at it that both for the RTP and all the other scholarships, they said, like, let's say they're giving 600 people. For these 600 people, there'll be PhD, there'll be master by research. So will you be able to be competitive enough such that if they have, like, let's say they want to award 10 people with 10 students who are going for masters by research funding, will you be able to win the funding? The reason why we say will you be able to do that, because remember, when you're speaking in research, most people's mind easily go to MPhil and PhD. So in this situation, what I would advise the person is you may want to see if you can apply for an MPhil. You can still get a scholarship for MPhil. And the beauty about Australia is if you make considerable progress within the first year of your MPhil. I don't know if that also applies to masters by research. After the first year review, they can start it to say, okay, go into a PhD direct. But I stand corrected. I'm not sure if that applies to masters by research. So that's my only like personal opinion.
Experience.
Yes, on this masters by research. I don't really see people coming for it, because if you think about it, I mean, you're coming, you're doing, yes, you're not doing like the quality of a PhD research, but you're still doing a research in the sense that you're having meeting with supervisor. You will be in the lab with PhD people too. You understand? You would still be taking some course. So I think the pressure is always much on them, because while doing the master by research, you will still be doing some master's courses. So because it's still a master's, and you will still be doing the research. The thing is, the scope of your research will not be as big as the PhD. But it's not like Nigeria where you just couple anything and you do it based on the standard of. So all those things they need to do, like ethics application, to be able to like get the approval to collect data, you need to go through that process. So the question you now ask yourself is this something you want to do? Unless maybe the research you want to do is a research where the data is secondary data, that you can easily get the data from the day one, without going anywhere. Yeah, so that one. And yes, there are funding. If there is funding for it, I mean, you can go for it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, I did a 2 years master's as well in South Africa, funded by MasterCard Foundation. So I think it's just based on opinion. So yeah, another advice I can give to this person is just do your research. Yeah, whatever you are getting from him, it is just a step. And
Yes.
also you have someone that can guide you based on whatever research you do. So you are getting a first-hand experience of someone who is in that system, because the truth is my own system might not definitely will not apply to the Australian system. So do your own research, get more advice, contact them, and yeah, I think you'll be fine. I think the last question I have for you for today, we only have around few minutes, 5 minutes before we say goodbye. uh what opportunities does students have to stay by in Australia for further opportunities, career opportunities? Thank you.
All right. In terms of opportunities for Australia, it's a bit of a mixed bag, and so you go online. Um, it's not me now trying to call out my orgas on Twitter because I see it every day. So they kind of paint the picture of, Australia, the rest, but I'm just gonna tell you the truth. It's just now that so for the past 2-3 years, Australia has been bleeding with regards to students coming out, during the COVID and the rest, and leaving for Canada, leaving for UK, leaving for the US, because they were not getting invitations for PR. Even those that got invited, the processing was and the unspoken issue, just like Canada, Australia, for some reason, you can come in as an engineer, do your MSc, sometimes time and chance may happen, you may not get work. So the beauty about the system is the kind of work you get can be able to sustain your family, and then you now start looking at quality of life. However, because like you always said, people's experiences are different. I have seen plenty of people here that, my brother, even before graduating, they got work. So like somebody said, it's always, what effort do you want to put to kind of promote yourself, upskill yourself? The company that is going to employ you here cannot come to your classroom and pick you up, because this is a society that rewards practical experience. So see the typical thing that happens. So the African student or the Nigerian student comes here for, let's say, MSc, for instance, that is not funded. Because of how expensive the schools are, I must tell you, they're quite expensive. From day one, they start working. So the student within that 16 months or 24 months of the MSc never had time to do internship, because the school will have internship opportunity. Never had time to do internship. Never had time to go for any career development program. Never had time to engage those. There are some courses that when they are teaching you, you would see that this lecturer like kind of has contacts, because he may have invited never had time to engage a lecturer. Maybe the student even ended up doing all the classes online. Tell me how you must have ticked all these boxes of you were not going to this physical school to network with people, because of you have to work to pay your school fees. You didn't do any of the internship, because the internship are not really paid as much as the work you're getting, and you need money. You didn't do any of the career. So the point is, for Australia, I think Australia, while we acknowledge the barriers in the system, it to an extent rewards how you dare to challenge the system. You get. So I've seen people who move from, the first 6 months, they get work. The first 6 months, the way they are moving, you'll be wondering, is this person using jazz? And there are some people who they are here like 2 years, nothing. 3 years, nothing. Let's take, for instance, in my field, construction is a bit difficult, because Australia would require you to have certain qualifications, certifications, and they don't do direct conversion from that of Nigeria. And then the way the companies will behave, they'll tell you that you need to go and start as a field assistant. And then again, you now look at it as a field assistant, what you'll be earning is far lower than even what all those blue collar work and survival job will give you. So that one is, the system has kind of made a decision for you, But there are some who still find a way, to kind of see how they can, combine and get. So like I noted, it's dependent on how your personal situation. So if you have time to engage the process, do internships, go for the career development programs, network, be on campus, let them see you. Don't be those people who are, because here, unlike Nigeria, where the lecturer forces you to focus, here the students can be watching YouTube video in the class. You can't tell them nothing, So if you follow them and do that without really focusing, it would in some way tell on you. So I believe yes, it's easy, you can get opportunities, and the government is also trying, like if you were observing the news, you would see that they've kind of extended certain postgraduate visas for certain courses at MSc, and for PhD, for all PhD courses, they've extended the post-study visa. So they are trying to attract people now, because they need people. It's just how to put yourself out there to see, because like I mentioned earlier, these people don't know you. So put yourself in their shoes. Imagine you are in Nigeria, because many a times we in Nigeria will forget that we see that situation. So somebody is coming from Ghana or Benin Republic, and the person is telling you, I can do this job, give me this job. Can you trust the person? Many a times, maybe the person is telling you he's coming from a certain school you've never heard of. You could only search it online. So you would need to kind of see the efforts the person has put. Or if maybe you go to an industry event as a practitioner, you see the students come for those events, you go for a conference, you see the students, that way the student is kind of registering in your head. You internship, you see this. Let's assume you don't even take the student during the internship application. When the student graduates, I bet you will be forced to take the student. So it's just how willing are you to engage the process. So I think that's it.
Thank you very much. We have additional
Take more
questions.
questions because I think I
Yeah,
still have 5 more minutes here, 10 more
okay,
minutes.
that's fine. Thank you very much for that, for giving us that additional opportunity. Maybe we can just do like yes or no approach. So can one apply to your school, UNSW, without an agent, and also to Australian universities generally? Can you apply without
Yes,
an
it
agent?
depends. So my school for PhD, you don't need an agent. I think for the BSc, you might need an agent, but my school kind of gives you option. Most of the Nigerians I see here came in without agents. So all the Australian schools I applied to, 3 in total, I never needed an agent. So there are certain smaller schools that still, they're still a bit backward where they need. I mean, that's a story for another day. But the top schools in Australia, the way it is now, the application is online. Though you have to realize that applying for MSc, the process might be a bit different than applying for PhD. To give you an example, for my PhD, they never asked me for IELTS, but for MSc, it's compulsory to present IELTS. So, like you mentioned earlier, the person will need to, go on the school's website and do their research to say, specific to this program, what do I need?
Thank you. Also, why applying? Do you need to pay for application fee?
No, no. Australia, New Zealand, I know, never ask you for application fee. No, I've never. That's unless if others are no, 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 no. I've
Okay,
never.
thank you very
Yes.
much. This is I'm sorry I won't be able to take in any more questions, but I'm going to actually maybe up the situation and ask just one general question. What are the general like application requirements? You have talked uh, about you doing your research, you securing a supervisor. What do you need to send to the supervisor? And whenever that supervisor agreed, that, okay, I'm going to take you on. What other things do you need? The CV, do you guys write essays, or do you do statements of purpose or motivation letters? What are
Yeah.
just those requirements generally that you know
Yeah.
that is used
So
by every?
general requirements are CV. Proposal is not usually compulsory. It depends on the school, and some proposals are usually short. 2 pages, 3 pages. Like I said, just details of your referees. Evidence of your writing. But when you're emailing the supervisor, at that point, it's just your CV that the supervisor needs to see. But be intelligent enough or be smart enough to in your CV, put links to like your LinkedIn, let so the supervisor can even go on their own, click and see. On the issue it might surprise you to know that most of the schools that apply to in Australia for PhD never ask me for any statement letter. The only thing they will do is when you're doing your proposal, at the bottom, they might tell you, provide a justification for why you are doing this research, why you chose this supervisor, why you chose this, because many of them would give you a strict word limit for the proposal, which is usually not beyond 2,500 words. So when you look at it, I mean, how many pages do you want to go and start writing for 2,500 words? It's already limited. That's around, I think, 5 pages. So you would see that what you might write that might act as a statement of purpose might be less than 7 lines. I'm talking for the schools where I apply to now. However, like I said, this is PhD. I know my friends who applied for MSc, they were writing 2 things. So if you're doing MSc, you would write a statement of purpose that is important, and there is something they call GTE. So there is this statement you have to put to show that you are genuinely coming for study, and at the end of your study, you would go back to your country. So many schools ask for it because when you are applying for visa, the government asks for that. And many schools have seen that the government usually deny many students visa on the basis of that GTE. So because of it, the schools want to see, the kind of things you are writing, so that they can even know if it's even worthwhile to start engaging the person. But remember, this is for MSc now. For PhD, it's straightforward. And I assume that it being straightforward is because of that thing of them being more interested in research because of how it helps their profile. Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much once again. Mr. Balogun Oluwatosin, I think your question has been answered. If you're applying for PhD, at least according to his experience, you do not need IELTS. But I don't know. Feel free to do your research for the
Yeah. So
university
sorry,
at
can I add something for
Yeah,
that?
sure.
You don't need that IELTS, but there is a letter which you can get. The average Nigerian university gives it to you that this person was taught in English. So some schools, your Nigerian passport is enough. So my school, I just needed to show my Nigerian passport, to say I'm a Nigerian. But some other schools, they asked me to also see that letter from my school to show that I was taught in English. Yeah, so that's the only thing here. But IELTS, no.
Okay, thank you very much. I can't remember the name of the letter now as well. I think it starts from P. There is this
I can't really remember also
English
quite a bit.
proficiency letter.
eh?
Yeah, proficiency letter.
Proficiency letter that you are proficient in English language, the teaching, the speaking, writing, and listening. So yeah, you can always feel free to get the proficiency letter. It will be handy for Australian application. And that is all from HISF today. I'm sure you are connected to us in every channel that we have. We are on LinkedIn, we are on Twitter, we are definitely on YouTube, and we are going to announce our future sessions. Do keep in touch with Mr. Michael on his LinkedIn program. It has been shared. Uh, so the link is shared in terms of an essay which you can read that can also foster your experience and knowledge to applying to Australian universities. Is also going to be shared by our technical team here, Mr. Akinwumi. Thank you for staying in touch all through the session. And lastly, thank you once again, Michael. Thanks to all the board members and every single stakeholder of HISF. They have made this opportunity possible. Thank you all. Do have a beautiful day ahead and stay in touch to the Nigerian election news. We hope that the Almighty God give us the best ruler, the best person to lead this country to the good destination. Imagine what Mr. Michael talked about the China country or Chinese countries supporting their students. Nigerians, we are too vulnerable out there. Whenever we are submitting an application, an average international supervisor knows that this person is applying and will be depending on funding from us. It's just worrisome. But we can build a country whereby the country starts supporting us, for opportunities in all these international universities. They do not have to, always see us as people that are dependent, people that are vulnerable. So we hope that the Almighty God give us such a president, and whoever emerges in the election, we hope that God guide them to the right path, make the work easy for them, and just give us a peaceful, loving, and prosperous country. Thank you very much. Do enjoy the week. Bye bye.
Bye bye. Thank you.